You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
Got the feeling of a crazy week coming up in Major League and Minor League Baseball. Welcome into the show, everybody. It is Minor League Baseball, is the show before the show podcast. We got a packed booth today. That's a lie. We're not all in the same booth. But Jake Seiner and Sam Dykstra both joining me for episode number 18 of the show. My name is Tyler Mon. Hi, fellas.
Hey, how's it going?
It's this has already been like an insane couple of days. We've got trades already. One that just broke about not even an hour ago. I don't think that we're going to talk about here momentarily. Last night, a big trade, obviously, involving the Colorado Rockies and the Toronto Blue Jays. And it has the feel of like one of those years, you know? Like, am I alone in that?
No, I remember last year, all those trades came down to the wire. And it feels like that's what it's coming to now, is that we're just going to have Friday's going to come the 31st, and it's just going to all happen at the same time. And even the things that already have happened, it's going to continue to pour on because we have so much time left.
And that's the crazy thing, is that it's all started so early on in the week. Like, it'd be one thing if we were doing this on Thursday, and you all might be listening to it on Thursday, but we're kind of preview the deadline for you. But we're doing this on Tuesday, and there's already, it's just like everything is breaking loose already. And let's dive right into it. Three strikes. We're going to start things off with the latest move that we have heard of as of just about an hour or so ago. The Oakland Athletics have traded Ben Zobrist to the Kansas City Royals in exchange for left-handed minor league pitcher Sean Manaea and right-handed pitcher Aaron Brooks. Sean Manaea, very high ceiling, a guy who has kind of fallen, I think, a little bit in prospect circles this year just because of some of the injury issues. Before the season started this year, he had abdominal and groin strains, but he's been back. He's been good. He's already made 6 appearances at advanced levels. He made 1 in the Arizona League when he got started, then 4 starts for Class A Advanced Wilmington. 1-0 record of 3.66 ERA there. He's since been promoted to the AA Northwest Arkansas Naturals, and 0-1 record of 5.14 ERA. He is definitely the centerpiece of this deal. And beyond that, the Royals are going for it, man, because this is not, I mean, the Royals making the Johnny Cueto move. They get rid of John Lamb in that trade, obviously. And the deals that they are making are byproducts of having a loaded minor league system. But when you see these names start to head out, this is going to be an interesting few days, it seems like, for the Royals, but an interesting few months, and then going beyond this, the next few seasons, to see where all these pieces land and how those guys climb versus what the Royals got in return.
Yeah, and so I do want to talk about this from the A's perspective, just because they're the ones getting the minor leaguers, and that's kind of what we focus on. And you got to kind of applaud Billy Beane for being able to pull a guy like Sean Manaea for half season of a rental. Ben Zobrist, obviously an excellent ball player and one of the more underrated ones probably over the last decade. But Manaea has some of the highest upside of anybody pitching in the minors, and he has an injury history, but it's a weird injury history, and it's one of those that's kind of hard to gauge how much does that predict that he's going to have more injuries in the future or something. He actually was considered one of the top prospects in the 2013 draft, and he fell in that draft because he had a hip injury, and he ended up having to have surgery shortly after the draft for the hip injury, and they kept him out for 2013. But not something that seems to have bothered him. He came back and pitched healthy in all of 2014, and Tyler, as you mentioned, just having the groin and the abdominal stuff early this year, but has been really fantastic. This year he's been up to 97 miles per hour. I've seen people written, has close to 11 strikeouts per 9 innings through his career. Has at times shown some really, really good command. I think that tends to come and go a little bit, but it's in there for him to end up having plus command, or a guy who can really locate within the zone really well with all of his stuff. Hasn't done that on a consistent basis necessarily, but the control, I think you can at least say, is there to something approaching an average level. Really a big upside arm, and Aaron Brooks is a guy who doesn't really rank among the Royals' top 30 prospects, but is a guy who fits, I think, the modern Billy Beane model of finding these guys who are, if you're high on them, you think maybe they're a number 5 starter or a number 4 starter. Probably they're more bullpen swing guy, but he seems to love grabbing those guys and having that depth, and has turned quite a few of those guys into usable pieces that fit in somewhere or another with his system. But really a nice return, I think, for Oakland, considering they gave up Daniel Robertson, who Robinson ranks 93rd on the MLB.com, just re-ranked their prospects. Manaea they have unranked, but honestly, I'd probably have Manaea ranked as a higher prospect than Robertson at this point, and they had to give up Boog Powell in that deal and also got back Escobar, so it's not quite one-to-one comparing Manaea to Robertson, but I don't think Oakland's system took too much of a hit just for the 7 months they rented Zobrist, essentially, and they're giving him up and giving him away at this point. But I think a nice return there for Billy Beane.
The crazy thing is, and I mentioned John Lamb, but Brandon Finnegan's in that deal as well, and we saw the way he rocketed to the major leagues as a member of that team that went to the World Series last year. But the Royals now, this system has been so loaded for so long, and it looks pretty drastically different now. And not a lot of teams have that luxury. And obviously, Jake, like you said, I mean, we're kind of more interested in what it means for the team acquiring these prospects. But the Royals system, I mean, re-ranking the prospects on MLB.com, right now Sean Manaea is still slotted in there as their fourth best prospect, but this is a very different minor league system now than it was 2 weeks ago for Kansas City.
Yeah, just to kind of chime in on that, I think the beginning of the season, a lot of different outlets, not just MLB, but had their top three guys as Mondesi, Manaea, and Finnegan, and now two of those guys are gone, and it's a little bit of a culture change for the Royals. You go to a World Series, you get a taste of that, and you want more of it, and now they have the best record in the AL. They are buyers, and why not dip into that and see how long you can sustain it? And when you have a chance to sell, and you have the pieces to do it, go and get those pieces and try to get something out of this. You don't know when the next World Series title run can come. So if you can get a Zobrist, then you have to go after it and try for it.
Yeah, I'd have to say I think the return for Cueto might have actually been a little stronger than the return for Zobrist, which was kind of surprising to me, especially Cody Reed, who was a double-A left-handed pitcher that went to the Reds in that Cueto deal. He's guys had a really strong year and really come on strong on some of the scouting reports. So I think Finnegan and Manaea maybe you rate in the sort of the same echelon of prospects. Maybe Finnegan a little bit ahead, but definitely think Reed makes that a stronger package, which surprised me a little bit just because I think Zobrist and Cueto are maybe of equal value, with Zobrist being a little safer, just not being a pitcher.
The Oakland Athletics, obviously you would assume are not done. I mean, this is such a different approach than what we saw last year from the A's when they really focused on the major league roster. Now it looks like they're giving a lot of focus to the minor league side because last week, catcher Jacob Nottingham, one of two players along with his minor league teammate Daniel Mengden, who was traded from the Houston Astros, Lancaster Jethawks affiliate, to the Oakland Athletics as part of a deal that brought Scott Kazmir to Houston. The Astros obviously feeling like they can contend in that division this year as they have all season, trying to make that push for the playoffs, which the Astros rebuild. And the fact that it's late July of 2015, and that team has a very realistic shot at winning the American League West is an entire podcast in its own. But Nottingham, Jake, you and I talked a lot about Nottingham and the way that he's really upped his status this year. But for those two guys, kind of a different road, because now you go to an organization that is somewhat in transition, I think, because of what we saw from the A's last year and now their seeming desire to go back to the Moneyball ways and go back to building themselves up from within rather than going out last year as they did make a lot of moves at the major league level. But Nottingham and Mengden, two guys who are very talented, going to Oakland as well.
Yeah, and kind of looking at those guys, the way I saw it was the Astros are kind of selling high on some low-level guys there. I mean, certainly with Nottingham, he's become more of a prospect this year, just the numbers he's putting up and the way he's produced over what he did last year at rookie level Greenville when he was, hitting 230. Now, between three different teams, he's hitting 320, has a 916 OPS. So if you can, it's 1 year difference, so they are kind of selling high, and when maybe some things have changed, but maybe he's closer to a high 200s hitter than this 320 hitter he's shown on us this year. Same thing kind of with Mengden. The numbers he put up at Quad Cities were really pretty strong. 1.16 ERA and 36 strikeouts, 38 2/3 innings. But then he went to Lancaster, and numbers changed a little bit. As they do when they go to California League. It was a 5.26 ERA, strikeouts still there, 48 and 49 2/3 innings. But when you're the Astros and you can send two of these guys that may not have been high up in their system, not high up in their rankings, and get a guy like Scott Kazmir, bring him home for that kind of cool story for a half year, really add to that playoff push for them. That was a good opportunity for the Astros, certainly.
The Houston Astros, this time last year, I don't think we would have figured we were having this conversation about them. This time last year, I don't think we would have figured we were having this conversation about the A's either. And that's what's so fun about this era of baseball now is it's not exactly the NFL where a team goes from worst to first every year, but there are teams who you don't necessarily expect to be in it who can be in it and vice versa now. And that's made it really, really fun over this prospect-laden era that we live in now, I think.
Well, there was that story this week, too, just to kind of go on that subject, where last year they booked a Taylor Swift concert for the playoffs.
Right.
Houston, and they said this is subject to change if the playoffs come, and everybody laughed because the idea of the Astros even being in contention. And then this week they had to announce that the concert has indeed changed because they are planning to have home playoff games in Houston. I mean, that's the
thing. And one other thing to talk about here with the Athletics and Billy Beane too is something that's been revealed. Is I think people were questioning how aggressively Oakland went after a lot of veterans, giving up prospects and pieces when they went after Jeff Joe and they went after Ben Zobrist. We're kind of seeing the master plan here for Beane and the Athletics might have been knowing that at some point those guys would have value to sell off. I think probably the hope was that they wouldn't be in that kind of position, but a really good job by the A's of being versatile and quick on their feet enough where, in the last year they've essentially turned Addison Russell and Billy McKinney and Boog Powell and Danny Robertson into a different batch of prospects and one that maybe isn't quite as heralded, but they also got, months of service out of Samardzija and months out of Zobrist and gave their team at least a chance to compete in the meantime. But the long-term future of the A's is not so different than it was before they started swinging these deals. I think obviously you miss Russell a little bit and miss McKinney. I'm not sure any of the players they have now are quite to that level, but it's not as though the system is barren, even though they have made their swing for the fences. They at least managed to cut themselves off and make these moves, time them well enough where the system, the cupboard never went bare and they never had to just let a guy walk and not get a comp pick or something in return.
All right, guys, going to wrap up Three Strikes this week with some climbing members of the New York Mets organization and some breaking news as of, again, just the last couple of hours. Michael Conforto, obviously promoted, made his Major League debut. First 3 games have been outstanding for him so far with a very hot start, a 444 average and a 1250 OPS through his first 3 games. Maybe a little bit small sample size, possibly, but still a very good debut so far for Michael Conforto. But Brandon Nimmo has now made the jump to AAA. We just heard that news today. So far this season, the former first-round pick, the 13th overall pick in the 2011 draft out of Wyoming, East High School in Cheyenne, Wyoming. This year in 68 games for AA Binghamton, a 279 average, a 722 OPS. He has been a pretty effective guy at the AA level in a ballpark that's not conducive to offense, a league that isn't very offensively conducive, but Brandon Nimmo's had a very good season, and now he gets that test at AAA.
Yeah, the one thing, as you were saying there, going from Binghamton to Las Vegas, I mean, those are 2 different parks. We'll get.
Yeah, it is a pretty big. That is a pretty big differential.
Right. Nimmo only had 2 homers this year in the Eastern League. Wouldn't be surprised if he at least hit 2 more in the PCL at some point. He's not a big power guy. He's one of those guys he's got tools. He's going to be at least Major League average in all 5 tools, but it's not like any one of them explicitly pops out at you. I mean, he may have double-digit power by the time he gets a little older. I don't know if that's going to happen necessarily. He's not going to steal a bunch of bases, but his feet are good enough to move around the base paths and play in center. He's got a pretty good arm out there. This will be a good test to see, A, if he can handle AAA pitching, and B, what happens when he does get to play in a little bit of a hitter's park.
Yeah, and I think I might be a little more bearish on Nimmo than most at this point, just because I think the big question to people who have questions about him really is the pull power in there? Is the ability to drive the ball out of the park really there? He is one of the best hitters in the minor leagues, I think, at tracking the ball deep into the hitting zone and hitting it the other way. He's a left-handed hitter, and he can use the left center gap about as well as any left-handed hitter in the minors. But it kind of seems like he's a one-trick pony in that regard. He's a really good 2-strike hitter because of that. But if he gets ahead 1-0, 2-0, and his numbers, certainly last year, I know bear this out, and I haven't checked this year. I probably should have checked that before I dove into this. But I think, based on the low home run numbers, I would expect it's still the case that when he's ahead in the count, he either doesn't have that swing or doesn't have the approach to where he's going to say, okay, I'm going to look for this fastball, middle up, something that I can drive, and then, go and drive that pitch. That's something he hasn't quite shown an ability to do and has had a lot of time sort of to show that. And this is something I think that it's been talked about with a lot of Mets prospects. I think we kind of have the same conversation about Dom Smith and whether the pull power is really there for him. It's something that Smith shows in batting practice, so you know it's in there. But I think he's only pulled one home run in his minor league career. He has 4 or 5 of them or something. I think only one of them been to the pull side. Nemo has a very similar approach. All these guys are Mets first-round picks, so that's maybe not surprising. It seems like a profile that they're getting after. But definitely something that stands out about Nemo where I wonder if that pull power is in there and if he can really succeed against upper-level pitching, once they figure out that, hey, maybe if we just stick inside on this guy, he's not necessarily going to beat us.
This is going to be one of those frenetic weeks for people who like prospects, for people who like baseball, because it's Tuesday as we're recording this, and I already feel like I need a nap. But there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking this week, and even if it's just like stuff like that, like guys making the climb up the organizational ladder because of maybe some paths that have been cleared in front of them, going to be a fun rest of the week. And from some of the more advanced guys in the minors who we were talking about just then, I'm going to talk about some of the younger guys in the minors who are really making some big impacts on a team that is loaded with very young talent, names like Michael Chavis and Rafael Devers and Javier Guerra and Yohan Moncada. We are going to head to Greenville, South Carolina, and catch up with Greenville drive manager Darren Fenster to talk some of the hottest young talent in the Boston Red Sox system next.
Our guest this week getting a rare off day here in the middle of the summer. The manager of the Class A Greenville Drive, kind enough to join us, is Darren Fenster on the phone. Darren, thanks for joining us. How's everything going?
It's going well. Enjoying, like you said, one of our rare off days here in a 140-game season, and happy to have you guys. We obviously want to talk about, you have a very talented roster you're working with there in Greenville, but I actually just wanted to start with you personally, because I'm always interested, especially in guys who are younger managers in the minor leagues, and we always talk about player development and the focus on improving players, but this is a chance too for young managers, obviously, to prove their chops and to kind of grow through. This is your second season now with the Greenville Drive, your second season managing a full season affiliate. I kind of wanted to ask first just how the experience has been different for you the second time around doing this now with a full season team. You had managed in the Gulf Coast League and the complex before, but the second time kind of going through a league and traveling and handling players in that environment, kind of how the experience has been different from you, kind of what the learning curve has been like, and just generally what you think you've picked up in your year and a half plus now of managing at that level. Right. I think I'm way more prepared this year just in dealing with a full season and understanding the true grind that not only the players but also our staff goes through over the course of the year. And, for the majority of guys at this level, it's their first full season, and they're going to go through the ups and downs that, all guys go through over the course of their careers. But at this level, because it is their first full season, it's probably a bigger adjustment because they've never experienced it before. So having dealt with it last year with the group that I had then, I think, both myself and the staff that we have here, we were more prepared to kind of handle these things. And, you almost get ahead of the curve and put these guys in an even better position knowing what's ahead of them.
Darren, when you join a full season league after being in the GCL, what's the biggest adjustment there? Because, obviously, Gulf Coast League, you're kind of in the team facility. You've got a little bit, maybe more familiarity around you. There's a lot of commuter trips, all that kind of stuff. But, then you jump up to Greenville and you're on bus rides overnight. The way you did it when you were a player in the minors, and the guys are staying in hotels and they're not at the facility and all that. What's the biggest difference for a coaching staff going from a short season league like the GCL and jumping up to the Sally League?
Well, GCL is an entry-level league, so I would probably say that the majority of the work at that level is you're doing as much professionalizing guys and in some cases babysitting guys as you are even working with them on the field. Once you get to this level, the guys who break with this team, they're either high school kids who have a couple of years under their belt, the Latin players who have been through the academy and through GCL and probably short season, so they have a few years in the organization, and college kids who, you would like to hope that are a little bit more mature. So what that allows us to do at this level is really take a significant step forward just from a baseball perspective, knowing that a lot of the professionalism has already been taken care of to this point. That doesn't mean we don't have issues that we have to deal with throughout the course of the year, but they are far fewer, and that allows us to do the job that we want to do, which is be on the field to help our guys, as players.
Yeah, I think that transitions well into the first player I want to ask you about is a guy who is making that transition, but I think he has even more
to it just because of other factors, that being Yohan Moncada obviously signed out of Cuba early in the spring, spent some time in extended spring training, got to you guys in May, and after maybe a little bit of a slow start, been hitting really well of late. I wanted to ask specifically with the off-field stuff with him, because he is coming from a country where he obviously probably didn't know anybody there, and he obviously shares a language with some of the people there, but new country, new playing style, doing it very rapidly compared to a lot of these other guys who maybe sign at 16 and get a few years to at least get acclimated to the professional process, and coming with all that money and everything too. I just want to ask, have there been any bumps on the road with Yohan getting sort of acclimated, and what's that process been like, and how's he done adjusting to all of that on top of just the regular, dealing with the day-to-day grind, the learning, the professional, the day-to-day? How's he handled all that?
He's been great, and I wouldn't necessarily call them bumps in the road, but rather just his learning curve, where without a doubt, my experience managing in the GCL at that entry level has helped me just in dealing with him, understanding that, hey, from the day that this kid signed in March or whatever it was, every single thing that we're introducing to this kid was brand new. And for us to expect this kid to have everything down from day one, it's not realistic. Obviously, the kid's going to have some significant expectations that come with, his signing bonus for his entire career. And, I think one of the things that I've told a lot of people is that, hey, this is a 19-year-old kid. He's actually just turned 20, but, this is a kid who is in low A for the same reason that everybody else is, because, he's got stuff to work on. And I think the experience he had in spring training, the experience he had in extended spring training, just to kind of get him comfortable with the daily routine before getting him up here in the beginning of May, put him in a very, very good place rather than sending him here right out of the gate only with a couple weeks under his belt. The staff down there did a really good job of kind of getting him acclimated, and not having the spotlight on him entirely. And then he got here and fell in line very, very well with the other 24 guys in the clubhouse who he built relationships with in spring training. I mean, that's one of the great things with how we have things set up down in Fort Myers is that, guys are all together. We have a minor league clubhouse and a major league clubhouse. So, there's really no separation. And so when he came in here, he had guys he could, continue to have a friendship with and a relationship with. And those guys who were already here for about a month understood the standard that we hold our guys to every day, understand the routine. And, he fell in line really, really well with them. Getting his feet wet here for a month and a half, getting comfortable in just the environment here, I think finally enabled him to just go out and play and, forget about all the outside factors that, might have been holding him back, might have been on his mind. And, now I think we're finally starting to see the player that, everybody expected when we signed him.
Darren, with a guy like that, is it ever difficult for you guys as a staff to communicate to him, it's okay, we understand that it's going to take a little while for to develop and to get adjusted to pro ball? I know, so many of the things you read, especially about the Cuban defectors, I know Jorge Soler, for example, when he was signed, kind of didn't really know why he was in the minor leagues for a while. I think in his first couple of seasons, he was kind of like, I got all this money, I'm very talented, why am I not in Chicago? Yasiel Puig, there were always the stories about how, when you give a guy who hasn't had a lot in his life, when you give him a lot of money, it contributes a lot of stress mentally to all of a sudden, man, I got to go out and perform. I have to be the best guy that I can be. Is it difficult at all as a coaching staff to make sure that you're able to communicate to a guy, we know this could take a little while, just relax, play your game, be the guy who you are, and everything will take care of itself?
I don't think there's any question about it. And, I think whether Yohan got $31 million or, $5,000, I think just his makeup is of someone who really expects a lot out of himself and holds himself to a high standard, which is a really good thing. And when he doesn't perform to that level, I think, he's disappointed in himself. But our focus here as a staff, and this isn't just with him, it's with every single player that we have, is not necessarily what goes on during the game, but everything that happens before the game, starting at 2 o'clock when our work days really begin, where, we do so much drill work on an individual standpoint between the defensive side of things, team fundamentals. Obviously, he's spending a lot of time, perfecting his swing with Nelson Paulino in the cage. And we preach to him and to everybody else, hey, we really just want you to lock in with your best effort, your best focus on all this stuff that we're doing before the gates open. And we promise us if you give us that kind of an effort and focus every day, the results that you want and that we want for you are going to take care of themselves, in the game. And to Johan's credit and to, a lot of other guys say here, they fully embrace that. And I think because of the fact that these guys, bulk of them have had some very good developmental years, and they've seen firsthand for themselves their own development, it helps to buy in on all that work starting at 2 o'clock that much easier. And, we got 30-some games left here to go, and, we're going to continue to push these guys all the way through the end of the year so that they finish on a strong note. And, we're excited to continue to work these guys and get them better every day.
Yeah, we'll slide across the infield. I want to ask about a guy who's played a lot of third base for you this year, and Rafael Devers, just 18 years old, obviously very young for that league. I think he might be the youngest guy in the South Atlantic League this year, and putting up really good numbers throughout the year. But it seems like recently the home runs are starting to come a little more. I know just from having seen him take batting practice and things that there's plenty of power in there. It's not something he lacks, but was something that was kind of just coming in small doses early in the season. I think he's got 3 in the last week. I just want to ask, if there's anything in particular you've seen from him that's letting that power sort of start to translate into games a little bit now, if there's anything you guys are working on to bring that out for him a little bit, and kind of how you toe the balance with a young kid like that who, if he's ever tempted to sell out for power or something, it seems like he's done a really good job of staying in his approach, at least based on the numbers and just watching a little bit of video and things.
Right. I mean, you said it's staying within his approach. I think, this is an extraordinarily talented hitter for his age to be doing the things that he's doing at this level against players. I think on average 3 to 4 years older than him is it's just really, really impressive. And his biggest thing, he's a middle of the field hitter who, because he's constantly thinking of just going right back at the pitcher, he puts himself in a position to handle the inside pitch and pull the ball that way, or go the other way on balls beyond the half the plate. And with regard to the power, with him or anybody else, power is really never anything that we even touch on at this level, unless we see a guy who's trying to force some power, and we're trying to get him away from that, because we want guys to become good hitters first, with the understanding that once you become a good hitter, you have a chance to add the power later. And for as talented as Rafael is, as fundamentally sound as his swing is, I think he's starting to grasp that on his own, where understanding some pitches that he's able to drive out of the ballpark, and whether he's consciously working on that or not, I think this is more of a case of someone who's just kind of figuring himself out relatively quickly. And I think if you look at his progression since we've signed him, he's had a lot of success of kind of figuring things out on his own, and being able to take the things that we talk about early on in the day and take them into the game. And obviously his results speak for themselves.
Yeah, and that's interestingly kind of transitions to another guy I wanted to ask about, and that's about the power, I guess, in particular with Nick Longy, outfielder and first baseman. Just as a guy with a corner profile, I think fans expect that a lot of power is going to come with that. And I think Nick has shined in a lot of areas this year. It looks like he has a really good approach, and the power hasn't been there. And it sounds like that's something that maybe sort of preached to him, is to not focus on that. I'm just curious where you think he falls on that scale, and if that's something you think he might grow into more, is that power, and kind of how, once he maybe gets beyond you guys at Greenville, kind of where and when that starts to come into the developmental process, you think?
Yeah, Nick is actually kind of the opposite of most hitters at this level in his age, where he's a far better hitter when he's deeper into the count and even with 2 strikes, where I think one of his best strengths is hitting the ball back up the middle and the other way. Early in the count, sometimes he gets a little bit over aggressive and to the borderline of undisciplined, and puts himself in the holes when he kind of makes a transition to just more of a see ball, hit ball. And he's peppered the right side of the field with line drives, extra base hits. I don't know what his numbers are, but I think he has a handful of doubles, maybe 4 or 5 home runs. But this guy does have some juice in his bat, completely untapped at this point. But one of his biggest focuses that we've discussed with him is just, understanding the importance of timing, understanding the importance of pitch selection, which he shows far better later in the count than he does early in the count. And I think because he's kind of got the hard part down, I think you're going to see a guy who's going to develop significantly over the next couple of years once he kind of truly understands, how to lock in on a series, on a specific zone and a specific pitch early in the count where he can get a little bit more aggressive in his swing. And then, as this kid grows, another young kid, 18, 19 years old, who is only going to get stronger over the next few years. And naturally, when that happens, hopefully that translates into a little bit more extra base power.
Darren, another teenager, which it seems like are the only guys that we talk about on this team because there's so much talent and it's so young. But Javier Guerra is a Sally League All-Star, a guy who has really improved a lot of things, it seems like, this year. But I want to ask you about a couple of things you've seen from him. One, he's leading this team in home runs, and a guy who's not a huge guy in terms of his size and doesn't play necessarily at a power position as your everyday shortstop. But between that, being able to hit with some pop this year, 13 homers in 82 games, and also the fact that he seems like he has improved his plate discipline a lot. I know last year he only walked, 5 times in 51 games or so in the GCL. This year he's got 22 walks. What have you seen from him as far as the development of his approach at the plate from last season to this season, or from even when he was debuting as a young kid to what you see from him now?
Right. Well, this is my first exposure to him. I was with him in instructional league last year, but wasn't really with him that much in spring training even this past year, to be honest with you, with the way that we split up our stats and our players. But I can tell you this, over the course of the 4+ months of the season, no one has made more significant strides from an approach standpoint than Javier. I don't know what his splits are month to month, but I can tell you that his walks have steadily increased. Like you said, if he only walked 5 times last year, that is actually a surprise that he walked that much, because he got called up to a major league spring training game this past year, and actually walked in his first plate appearance. And we had the game on in the conference room, and it was almost comical to the point that it's the guy that's been in the organization for a few years, and, hasn't drawn that many walks, and he finally gets a chance to be with the major league team, and he draws a walk in his first at. So that's something that we've been focusing on, trying to get to be more selective, but still not taking away his ability to be ready to hit a first pitch or to hit early in the count. And he has done an outstanding job of just zoning in on one pitch, being more, having better pitch recognition. And what that's done, it's put him into more favorable hitting counts. So we've seen the results in average, we've seen the results in just his extra base hits, and he's just continuing to get better each and every day. It's a kid with as good aptitude to take something that we talk about at 2 o'clock and to take it into the game at 7 o'clock. Kid who loves the game, who's very, very smart, has a passion to play, and like everybody else here, has a high expectation of himself. And I think that's why there's such a good buy-in from his part.
Yeah, Darren, one last question from me, just about another player. We talk a lot about, obviously, teenagers really playing over their heads and punching above their weight there with Greenville. And one guy who is a teenager who seems to be having maybe a little bit of a tougher time with that adjustment has been Michael Chavis, first-round pick for the Red Sox last year. Just wanted to ask kind of what you've seen from him, if there are areas where you think he's been improving. It seems like he's been stringing together a few base hits of late and homered on Monday. Just kind of what you've seen from him, and you think it's been challenging for him, especially just to be in an environment where there are so many teenagers who are playing well and getting some of the attention that comes along with that. Kind of what the season has been like for him, and what you think the key is for him, and turning things around a little bit in the second half and getting a strong start or a strong finish to the year.
Yeah, it's definitely been an up and down year for Mike. Offensively, he's not where he or us, obviously would like him to be at this point. But often something that gets lost in the shuffle is what guys do on the defensive side of the ball. And similar to the development that Javier Guerra has made offensively, this is a completely different player defensively at third base, where I take almost 3 different snapshots of when I first saw him in instructional league last year to spring training this year to where he is right now. His development is just absolutely incredible, to the point where this guy is really coming along as a third baseman, playing under control, keeping his feet consistent, throwing the ball across the diamond, without much effort, but still having a lot of carry on it. And the point that we've kind of stressed to him is for him to understand the things he's done defensively, the focus that he's put into that work, and the the attention to the details there and to see how far he's come along, and just trying to get him to be of the same mindset offensively. But he does put a lot of pressure on himself, and whether that has to do with the guys who surround him every day, or whether that has to do with him being a first-round draft pick, or just a kid who's not used to failure, because we sometimes forget a year ago this kid was in high school, and we're taking baby steps with him, and approach is a big deal for him, and he's one of those guys who wants to have the power, and we really got to get him more focused on just staying in the middle of the field, and understanding that the power is going to come naturally. And he's shown us some glimpses of that. And a couple of weeks ago, we had a series in Asheville, whose stadium is actually pretty conducive to exactly what we want him to do, where it's a short center field and a very short right field. And whether that played into his approach to that series, I mean, he was back up the middle and the other way with some juice behind it, in as consistent a 4 or 5 game set as we've seen out of him. So he has the ability to do it, and it's just a matter of him kind of taking that approach each and every day, and trusting all the work that we're doing previous 7 o'clock, like all these other guys. So it's been a little bit of a slower process with him, but he has shown us that it's in there, and we're just trying to get it out a little bit more every night.
Darren Fenster is the manager at Class A Greenville and the Boston Red Sox organization. Darren, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Hope you enjoy the rest of the off day.
Thanks, Darren.
Appreciate it, guys. Yep, thanks. Take care.
Our biggest thanks to Darren Fenster of the Boston Red Sox organization, joining us from Class A Greenville in the South Atlantic League. And we're going to stay in the South and continue chatting with somebody who is very familiar with oppressive heat, as I'm sure Darren Fenster is as well. But our good pal Benjamin Hill joins us. Welcome back to the show, Ben. Earlier on in the year, the Midwest League, very hot and humid, and you were at another place that could also make you melt this season.
Yeah, I'm in New Orleans. I'm trying to learn how to say it right because I still try to say New Orleans, but I guess it's more of a New Orleans. I don't know. But that's where I am, and it is very hot, but I feel like complaining about being in Louisiana in the summertime is just, well, of course it's hot. Like, why'd you go there then? So I feel like I don't really have much room to complain. I booked this trip, and here I am, and yeah, it's hot. Even putting on my, Ben's Biz uniform, just a pair of jeans and a collared shirt, trying to look somewhat professional. It's rough.
Do you have a collared shirt, at least with your own logo yet?
No, there's no Ben's Biz merch at the moment.
Dang
but
it.
I really do need a collared shirt logo, or actually a little polo shirt with the insignia.
Yeah,
I wear myself on my left breast.
I would totally rock a T-shirt with the Ben's Biz Blog logo on it. Can we do that? Let's talk to somebody. Somebody take a letter. Or write to a merchandising company. Ben, obviously kicking off a southeastern southern road trip this week, as we discussed last week. But I want to dovetail off of a topic that we covered last week, which is the Fresno Tacos. The rebrand for one night. Taco Truck Throwdown, the 5th edition of that in Fresno. Fresno Grizzlies are going to be the Fresno Tacos for one night. But there was a story that came out this week that there is apparently discussion going on. I don't know how serious it is. The author of the story did not know how serious it is. That there is at least some level of discussion going on in the Grizzlies front offices as to maybe we should just be the Tacos permanently. And I emailed you that link. Do you think there's any chance that actually happens? I mean, obviously you would think, oh, Tacos, what a ridiculous name. But, we have a team named the Flying Squirrels in MILB. Like, it's not that outlandish. Do you think there's a possibility this happens? Fresno goes to be the Tacos full time?
A possibility, yes. I mean, would I bet on it? No. But one thing, I've learned through covering this world over the last decade, and especially in recent years, is there's been a lot of times I've thought to myself, nah, they're not actually going to do that. Like, El Paso's not going to be the Chihuahuas. And thinking I have a good read on what's going to happen and what's not. I've been consistently surprised in recent years just how far teams are willing to go. That said, the reason this got so much attention, Fresno Tacos, is because it is a one-time thing. It's a way to have fun for one night tied into a specific promotion. The novelty would wear off. It would be a huge amount of publicity if they changed their name full-time. But then once that wore out, you still have to be the Tacos every day, and I'm not sure if that's something the community could embrace long-term, as much as they do embrace tacos. Never say never, but if I'm a betting man, I'll put the odds at 4-1.
See,
Why not?
I don't know. I wonder about this because I feel like I still, in my interactions with people who are outside of the minor league baseball world, which somehow they still talk to me, all those other people, every time somebody finds out that there's a team in Montgomery called the Biscuits, they lose their minds. I feel like
that is true.
This might be an opportunity for Fresno to build something with some real staying power. If you ask people right now, who's the minor league team in Fresno, unless you're from the area or a fan of the Giants or the Astros or something, you might not know it's the Grizzlies. I don't even know. Are Grizzlies, are they native to Fresno? I don't know what's behind that name. But if they're the Tacos, people are going to know that team and that brand.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And I think the Biscuits is a good point. That has worked for them. So, that's why I said never say never. And I think you make a good point that, Grizzlies isn't all that specific to Fresno. The state bear, or it's the bear on the state flag, and it has some California connection to them, but tacos are much more specific to Fresno and the Central Valley than are grizzly bears. So I think you've got a good point there, and it would be just the more people realize it through the years. Wait, their names are tacos, just like we see now with the Biscuits. The Biscuits has been around for more than a decade, and there's still people like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. So I could see going that route. You could amaze someone every single day.
Ben is continuing to crank out some really good stuff from his trip through the Carolinas, the Virginias so far this season. But the trip through the South starts in New Orleans, and I have never been to New Orleans. I haven't been to the Zephyrs facility, but I've heard a lot of interesting things about it. That it's the Zephyrs seem like they were caught in one of those strange eras of minor league baseball. It was at the kind of the start of the MILB renaissance, really, when they moved to New Orleans. But it wasn't the full blown late '90s, early 2000s explosion of minor league baseball that we saw. What are you anticipating seeing from New Orleans? Because, it's a city with an NFL team and an NBA team, and they're kind of one of those sort of quadruple A markets. But this experience in New Orleans, what are you anticipating seeing tonight at checking out the Zephyrs?
Yeah, I'm curious about it because it's not a team I've gotten much of a sense of just through the years covering them to the extent I have covered them from afar. The team's not even located in New Orleans proper. It's a town a little further out, and I'm forgetting the name, and I'm about to drive there, like Metairie, something like that.
Yeah, Metarie, I think it is, Metairie, which probably has some weird French pronunciation that I don't know in Louisiana, but yeah.
Right, and I'll nail that down today. But so it's not, if you live in the city proper, you really, you've got to get out there and commute to the game. It's not near anything else specifically. And really, the few people I've talked to, I saw a friend of mine who lives in the city today. I feel like the general sense is like, oh yeah, we maybe go on July 4th, maybe once or twice. I don't think it's, even as a major market, I don't think the average person living here is really tapped into the team much. They're out of sight, they're out of mind. And it's a city with so much culture and so much else going on that minor league baseball is kind of hard to enter into the equation. So I think they do okay, but, being a little isolated, playing in a very hot market, like just literally very hot, playing in a market with a lot of other things to do, I think they've had a hard time really establishing themselves just in the city at large. And I'm curious to kind of see, what kind of fans show up tonight and who they are and how the team really does on a Tuesday night in late July.
Well, when you mention the culture, that's the first thing I think of New Orleans. I haven't been there either, but every time I hear something, it's almost like another world, especially for those of us up in the Northeast. Just kind of in the way you've planned it or researched them or in your work with them, do they try to tap into that different, Bayou culture, New Orleans culture at all, or is it just because it's a little outside the city, it's its own kind of thing?
I'm sure they tap into it, to at least some extent. You can't not and be located where they are. One thing I'm looking forward to seeing is, their mascot is a nutria, and I've never seen a nutria before.
I don't even know what that
mascot is. Nutria. They're kind of like large rats, and apparently they're delicious. And there was apparently
what really
to get people to eat them because they were overrunning a lot of these kind of outland swamp areas, and people were saying like, "Hey, kill these things, eat them, have a good time." But that's the mascot, a nutria. You might look at it and think that's a cat or maybe an otter, but it's a specific Louisiana kind of feline rat-looking thing, and who knows? Maybe they got some nutria at the concession stand, though. Not holding my breath.
I had no idea that was a thing. I think I would have just figured it was a rat. And, again, like in the world of minor league baseball, it's not like that would have been outlandish. There's a team named after squirrels.
You know what? A nutria sounds more like a thing that Brett Phillips would swing a baseball bat at.
It's just a standard rat. And then this nutria came on the field. Benjamin Hill, our good pal, joining us from New Orleans. Ben is also headed to Biloxi on this trip, which I think will be really cool, too. That whole situation, the ballpark opening mid-season this year, but the fans have really gone crazy embracing Biloxi so far this year. Go give Ben a follow on Twitter. He is at Ben's Biz. Check out the blog, bensbiz.mlblogs.com. And as long as you do not melt, Ben, we will talk to you next week.
All right, sounds like a plan. I'll do my best to stay solid.
Benjamin Hill on the road. Again, you can give Ben a follow on Twitter at Ben's Biz and follow his road trip all season long. The multiplicity of road trips that he has taken all year have been through such a wide range and diverse, like from the new ballparks and crazy food to like when he was in Lynchburg and they had weird food, but it's an old ballpark and it's being rained out. Nobody covers it all better than Ben, so give Ben a follow on Twitter. He is at Ben's Biz. Gents, last night, Monday night, very long evening for a whole lot of people who were waiting around to figure out which Toronto Blue Jays were going to be shipped out in the deal for Troy Tulowitzki. The final name of that group did not even come out until this morning, but this has been a very big, and I think kind of a big head-scratcher for a lot of people, but a very big domino to fall early on in the trade deadline as the Blue Jays have shipped 3 top pitching prospects to the Colorado Rockies in exchange for Troy Tulowitzki. There were some other names involved in that deal, obviously, like LaTroy Hawkins and Jose Reyes, but hey, we're here to talk about prospects on this podcast. Jeff Hoffman, who Jake and I interviewed back on episode number 10 of this show, which you can go find now on MILB.com and on iTunes as well. Jeff Hoffman slots into MLB Pipeline's rankings of Rockies prospects as the number 4 prospect in the organization. The Rockies have also acquired right-hander Miguel Castro, and the final piece to fall in that deal is yet another right-hander. That's Jesus Tinoco. He'll slot in at number 18. But this is something that the Rockies have not done, and something a lot of people have said that they need to do for a long time. They're never going to be able to sign free agent pitching. They got to go get it in trades. And Jeff Hoffman and Castro especially seem like 2 very high ceiling guys. Your initial reactions to this deal, you guys?
Yeah, I thought it made sense for them to trade, and I think it made sense maybe less for the Rockies, but more to get a deal done for them to bring back a guy like Jose Reyes and his contract, just because it's hard to make deals for big salaries like that and commitments when GM's are already working within a budget in the middle of the season. So I'm not surprised that if a deal went down in the middle of the season, that's the kind of deal that went down. As far as the return, I definitely think the Rockies are swinging for the fences here, and they're doing it in a way that's pretty predictable just based on their nature. They have a really hard time, obviously, bringing free agent pitchers to come into Coors Field. So they've tried really hard, both through the draft and through trades and things, to get arms that can be impactful arms that are capable of working at Coors Field. Now, that said, I think Hoffman is, we've talked about Hoffman and to Hoffman this year, friend of the podcast. I think he's an excellent pitching prospect. I think he is an interesting fit for the Rockies because they have really gone after a lot of guys whose strengths are working down in the strike zone, working down with movement. I think Eddie Butler is a really good example of that. I think John Gray has some of that, has an arsenal that can be geared towards ground ball pitching. Hoffman is not necessarily that guy. He has big velocity, and his fastball can tick up into triple digits. He's at 99 this year, and he's just coming back from Tommy John surgery now, so you figure there might be another tick or 2 in that tank. And his best off-speed pitch, though, is a hard 12-6 curveball, something with a lot of break, a lot of movement, the kind of thing that's going to be set up better by fastballs up in the zone, more so than stuff down in the zone. And he has a changeup that's been a little firm this year as he's coming back from the surgery, but has shown some promise in the past and certainly projected to be a pretty good third pitch. But the fastball and the curveball are his big one, too. And those kind of guys are usually the kind of guys who have to rely a little bit more on pop-ups and fly balls and certainly on strikeouts. The strikeouts haven't really been there for Hoffman so far this year. I don't think that's really a point of panic just because, again, he is coming back from the surgery. For various reports, I think the guy who's really been on top of Hoffman's recovery has been Kyler McDaniel with Fangraphs. He's talked a lot about how the Blue Jays kind of have adjusted Hoffman's delivery a little bit this year. He's been a little bit more upright. Looks a little bit like Aaron Sanchez, who's pitched out of the bullpen with the Blue Jays and obviously been one of their top prospects for a while. And the curveball hasn't been quite as sharp. Hoffman seems to still have. He had a curveball that was getting plus to plus grades when he was in college. and he's shown a few of those, so it's still in there. But it seems like he is intentionally toning that down and holding back a little bit on the fastball velocity, which might just be a thing where he's coming back and being careful with the elbow because he is, just 14 or 15 months removed from Tommy John surgery. But it's going to be interesting to see what kind of pitcher he turns into. And the Rockies especially, they are really big in the development process on getting guys to keep the ball down in the zone, try to generate some movement on fastballs. And these are things that are not necessarily MOs for Hoffman. I think every pitcher tries to pitch down and locate within the strike zone and those kind of things, but are maybe less important for him and his repertoire than they might be for other pitchers. I think he's an interesting fit for that. Tinoco is more of a guy that really fits, I think, what Colorado tries to do with the ground ball pitchers, and the Castro has some of that in him too. But definitely 3 upside arms and guys that make sense in a lot of ways for the Rockies if they're going to move a guy like Tulowitzki to try to get some impactful pieces for the rotation.
What I find interesting about this move is that the Rockies seem like they are taking a new tact in what they think can work to win at Coors Field. For so long, there were all these very bizarre attempts to figure out what could tame Coors Field. Oh, maybe we'll go 4 pitchers, and they'll only throw 75 pitches apiece, no matter how well they're throwing, and then we'll take them out, and we'll put in a piggyback guy behind him. And there's these very odd, when it never came down to, I don't know, why don't you just try getting better players? That was, never in the equation. They always had these very weird approaches. Now, I think the big thing is, the Rockies now have a player development guy running the show in Jeff Bridich, and that's what seems to be the biggest difference between this and seasons past is Jeff Bridich, I think, and as it seemed this morning at the press conference at Coors Field, has been told by Rockies owner Dick Montfort, this is your thing now. You go do it. You need to do to build a winner here. And for so long, he was way too meddlesome in affairs. That was always the impression that people got out of the Rockies front office situation was that Dick Montfort had too much weight in calling shots. Having a player development guy in that position now seems like it will benefit the Rockies as being a draft and develop kind of organization. I'll be interested, though, Sam, in the way that these guys transition, especially for somebody like Hoffman, who a Tommy John guy a year ago, very, very good in his debut so far. I mean, as we know, he touched 99 in his professional debut, his first start back from Tommy John surgery. But, it's like you were you're a puppy, you're adopted by somebody, and then all of a sudden you're gone and you're off somewhere else. It's barely over 1 year in an organization. That's probably not an easy transition to just be all of a sudden flipped and go somewhere else.
No, I'm sure it's not, but it's one way to just kind of learn how quickly this business works. I think Jeff did that. It sounded like he was very thankful when you guys talked to him, reading some other stuff, just thankful for the opportunities the Blue Jays gave him to begin with. Now it's a new organization. Like you said, if they are really evaluating hard throwers like him, he might even have a little more value for the Rockies. They are going to prize him. He's, for the rest of his time there, he's going to be known as maybe the prize of the trade that sent away Troy Tulowitzki.
That's a great point.
That's a little bit of pressure, obviously. I mean, to be known as that guy for the rest of your career, but at the same time, they're going to treat him like that type of prize, and I think that's going to kind of help him at least ease that transition. I'm more interested to see how he's going to do next year. When he's fully back from the surgery. Obviously, he's fully back this year, but just the first full season, see if the strikeout numbers do come or if he is relying a little bit more on contact. But yeah, I think he's a guy that the Rockies fans can be excited for going into next year when he is fully healthy, when he is fully using all of his arsenal and has it all behind him.
Rockies general manager Jeff Bridich did say that the assignments today have pretty well been determined for all 3 of these guys. The Rockies will send Jeff Hoffman. He'll actually not really make that far of a journey. He gets to stay in the Eastern League. He'll go from New Hampshire to New Britain. As it looks right now, Miguel Castro, who has the potential to start, is probably going to stay in the bullpen for the time being. He'll go to AAA Albuquerque. And Jesus Tinoco, who spent the majority of this season, spent all of this season with Class A Lansing, he will go to Class A Asheville in the South Atlantic League. So those 3 guys, like I said, kind of the first huge chip to fall in the Major League Baseball non-waiver trade deadline for 2015. And it's got the feeling to be a very big week. I mean, we're recording this on Tuesday. Who knows what the world's going to look like on Thursday at this rate? Yeah,
one thing, kind of staying on the Rockies, reading the story today about Nolan Arenado and how hard he took the Tulo trade, just how close they were. He also said he expects Carlos Gonzalez to be traded. So, we get to see if that does go down, just what type of pieces the Rockies are looking to retool with and who they can get and from whom. We'll have to check in again on that next week.
It's going to be a fun week. Always a very, very fun week. Headed up to the non-waiver trade deadline, and keep an eye on our feeds at MILB. Sam Dykstra and Jake Seiner. Obviously, you can find on Twitter as well. Jake is at Jake_Seiner, and Sam is at Sam Dykstra MILB. I am at Tyler Mon, and we'll be doing our best to break news this week as it happens as well. Last night was like so agonizing, waiting around for hours upon hours for those names to come out, but it's a fun time of year, and it's going to get a little bit crazier before it calms down. So we'll wrap up the 18th edition of MILB.com's The Show Before the Show podcast coming up next. Closing out the 18th edition of The Show Before the Show, the Minor League Baseball podcast. You can give us a follow. You can subscribe to the podcast, rate and review on iTunes. You can also check out the podcast page at MILB.com. Got a lot of cool stuff coming up there. And as we were just discussing between segments, this week we will be your destination spot for all of the players who you have not yet heard of who are coming to your team via trade. So be sure to check out MILB.com all week this week. And we got some good stuff coming up on MILB TV this week as well. Northwest League and the Pioneer League will play an inaugural All-Star game against each other coming up on August 4th. That's a Tuesday, so you can check that out in addition to other stuff, gents.
Yeah, we got Sean Manaea. We don't know when he's going to debut for Midland, but Midland is on TV for a while now in the Texas League. I think pretty much everybody in the Texas League has a feed. Midland has a pretty good one, so if you're an A's fan and looking to get your first look at Manaea, you're definitely going to get that. And Aaron Brooks maybe at AAA with Nashville, might get to see that, and Jeff Hoffman probably will be on TV a good amount with New Britain. So everybody going to be pretty much all the big names I think we talked about today are going to be on TV at some point. Nemo and Conforto you can catch on MLB TV. He's no longer our problem, but everybody else I think pretty much we talked about you can see this weekend if you so choose.
And not to mention, postseason races are going to be heating up again. We had clinches, obviously, in the short season leagues this week, but second half races get started really in earnest next month, headed toward the postseason in the first week of September. So fun time of year, as it always is. And that'll do it for episode number 18 of The Show Before the Show. Rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. If you have questions, you can get in touch, podcast at MILB.com. Give us all a follow on Twitter as well as MILB. You can follow the site on Twitter as well. And until next week, when your team may look drastically different than they do right now, enjoy the deadline. We'll talk to you next week.